right, ladies and gentlemen, we're live. And we're gonna get set up here real quick. Just give me got 2 minutes, so long enough to get ourselves together here. Let me check something out real quick. Let me switch up on some audio. All righty, there we go. Hopefully that'll work. Let's check out everything real quick. Make sure everything sounds good. There we go. All right, yeah, we good. Hopefully that'll work. Let's check out everything real quick. All right, yeah, so we're good right now. Yes, indeed. All right, so what is today? January the 10th, 2026. And just yesterday afternoon, as a matter of fact, the New York State Community Commission for Reparations Remedies conducted another live event, if you will. And we're going to take a look at it. All right. Well, we are going to take a look at it. Let me see here real quick. Let me just check some other things out. There we go. Let me check one more thing out real quick. I guess we might not be able to do that, so I can do it here. Let me check this out. I think I can. All right, we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes or less. All right. Make sure everything is going good. All right. There we go. I think everything is good. So what we are doing today is we're on 2 different platforms. We're on about 8 different social media platforms today. And I'm kind of knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone, so I don't have to go back and do one today and then do one on the other. So we are live on 365 Ideas, which on YouTube. We are live on Thoughts of the Week podcast on YouTube and Twitch. We are also on my personal pages on Facebook and Twitter. And we are on live events now on YouTube. And we are on What's the 411 News on YouTube and Twitch. All right. And this is the New York State Commission for Reparations Remedies. This was the January 9th. This happened yesterday. And we're going to play it for you. From time to time, I might either stop the video or comment while the video is going. So I might lower down the volume and comment on it. All right. I should have had this thing playing, so we're going to go ahead and start playing that now as we speak. All right. We're going to have that playing right now, and we're going to pull this up, let you guys take a look. All right. Let's pull that up here. There we go. What's going on, everybody? What's good? And yeah, we're going to have the reparations. This is the reparations New York State Community Commission for Reparations Remedies, which occurred yesterday. We're going to play it for you here. All right. And what they're going to be talking about, they're having a business meeting. And yeah, we're going to tap in and take a look at it, man. All right. Let me just see something real quick. Where we at? All right. What's up to all the people watching on Twitch? Thanks for coming in. We are on Twitch on What's the 411 News, and we are on Twitch at Thoughts of the Week podcast. So shout out to y'all. What's good? Thanks for tapping in. Again, this is the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies, which occurred yesterday on January the 9th. We're going to take a look at it today on the 10th. And y'all get to tap in and see what's going down. All right, so I'm going to move myself out the way for a little bit. If, like I said, from time to time, I might make some comments on some things I might hear. And I don't really want to stop the video. I just rather it play, and I might comment in between. I might turn the volume down for the video that you're looking at right now, and I might make a comment here or there. I'm gonna try to not make any comments at all. It might be best for people to hear and check out, right? And that might be the better way to do it. Okay, but again, I might from time to time tap in and put my comments in. All right, so you guys enjoy. And again, this is the New York State Community Commission, Reparations Remedies. And with that being said, we're going to do two things. Hopefully, I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop that video real quick because they'll probably get ready to start. I got to do this for both of my channels here. We got to give the station identification, if you will. So welcome to everybody from What's the 411 News. Let's go. Welcome Black to What's the 411 News, where we bring you news observation, interpretation, and news commentary from an FBA and BGR perspective. Let's get it. All right, I'm going to see if I can do this. There we go. All right, we won't do that. So again, since it's on several channels here, I got to do this one for Thoughts of the Week podcast. So what's up, everybody? You're rocking with the best. This is Thoughts of the Week podcast. I'm kind of hitting two birds with one stone today, all right? Let's get it. You're rocking with the best. Thoughts of the Week podcast. All right, there you go. So I got both of the channels out. We're gonna go back to What's the 401 News. There we go. And yeah, let's go ahead and play this, man. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. This is the New York State Community Commission for Reparations Remedies. Yes, we are live. This is not a recording. All right. And feel free to comment if you want to. Like I said, I might go ahead every now and then, once in a blue moon, depending on what gets said. Maybe or maybe not. I might tap in with my own comments as the video plays. All right. I'm going to try not to, so you guys can get the full gist of everything and what's going on, so you can keep abreast of what's going on. But yeah, so let's get this started, man. They should be getting started here shortly as well. This was from yesterday, January the 9th. All right. And so we're going to play it today on the 10th. All right. So go ahead and let them do their thing.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. So I've asked before we get started, just to make sure we've identified our policy analyst folks, the folks from PSA, if they could please put their names in their chat so that they can get the right permission. So when it's time to speak, we're lifting the right groups. And so we just need that as we prepare to start. Vice Chair, good to see you. I'm going to lean on you or your side, and we'll take care of what's happening here in Rochester. And I'll look to Jim to tell us when we're ready, when you're ready.
How many do we have on Zoom?
4. How can you see the Zoom? We can't see the Zoom. Okay.
Because we have a monitor.
It's right in front of us, and there's one behind us.
So Commissioner LaRee Daniel Favors did join Zoom.
Oh, we can see the Zoom. Oh, good.
Okay. Is it? Do you have this, right?
I do.
The whole packet.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chair Hawkins, is it possible for us to see Commissioner Daniel Favors?
Well, they're
Oh,
getting her in now. They're getting her in, but I thought she was on her way too. Yeah, they're working on it. So I don't think we need to wait for that. And we can identify her once she gets in, because we're already 10 minutes late.
Greetings, Madam Chair. I can hear you, but I'm unable to come on camera from this end.
Okay, so you'll just introduce that way. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
All right. But now I can't see them. So is there a way she can be on and then they could be on the screen too? Okay, no worries.
Because she spoke. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, with her, it's spotlighted. Maybe they can unspotlight her for now and then it'll bring me back to the commissioners. You got it. Perfect. Thank you.
So if you're able to.
Just as a video conference, they are.
Yeah, we.
Okay. So, hopefully we could get Commissioner Daniel Favors on camera. Oh, she can't.
You can't.
Okay.
Address that.
All right. I'm gonna text her and let her know.
You got a quorum without her.
Yeah, but she can't speak if she's not online.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an open meeting?
Oh, she's good. She's good.
Okay, perfect. Yay.
Good.
Can't hear us?
She can't talk.
Oh, she can't talk.
She
Okay.
can hear us. Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Well, who's that?
And who's that?
Who's that?
Okay, so we should turn the member of the public off camera. Okay. All right.
That person was public.
So in Zoom, we should be able to, so you probably should set it up as like a panel in Zoom, because when you set it up as a panel, different individuals have authority to
Yeah.
either speak and be on camera, and then others won't be.
Right, but Riley has to do that in every individual that comes into the meeting.
So they're gonna,
Riley's doing that.
So, okay, so, okay,
He
okay,
can't.
okay.
But they
Okay.
can pop in till.
Okay,
Right.
All right. Sorry, everyone. We're going to get there.
Let's roll.
All right. We're going to get started. Jim, you'll let me know when we are live. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies. This is a business meeting. And as a reminder, the business meetings differ from the public hearings. At the business meetings, this is where the commission will conduct its business of the commission. You'll hear updates about our vendors. You'll hear updates about the work we're doing, but we will not have a public comment section. And so we thank those that are joining and streaming live. We appreciate the ones that have joined via Zoom, and we are going to get started by welcoming all the commissioners. We are in 2 locations. We heard from you all. And so 2 locations provide us an opportunity to provide space for the upstate and downstate area. And downstate, we're at the Philipse Manor Hall historic site. So in Yonkers, New York, hello folks in Yonkers. We'll let you all introduce first and then we'll introduce afterwards. And then we also have Commissioner Daniel Favors online. Matter of fact, we'll let her go first because we always forget about the folks online. So we'll start with Commissioner Larry Daniel Favors.
Muted.
Okay, so we'll wait for them to lift her volume. Can you, if they can unmute her, let's see if we can get it, or she can, there we go, you're ready.
Hi, so just by way of protocol, I cannot unmute myself. I have to have permission from the Zoom host to be unmuted. But having said that, Happy New Year to all. I am so grateful to be in another year doing this work, and I look forward to a productive meeting.
Happy New Year. Yonkers, I'll give the floor to our Vice Chair, Dr. Deborah Jenkins.
Okay, good morning and happy new year. Good to see everyone. Happy to see the seats are filling up here in Yonkers. This is a wonderful site. I think it's something that we should take note of going forward. I am Dr. Deborah Jenkins and happy to serve our community in this auspicious fight for reparations for us. And we've been doing the work and we're going to continue to do the work. And I'm happy to serve alongside this enormously talented panel of commissioners. Turn it over to my left, our treasurer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jennifer Jones Austin, and I am delighted to be here for this business meeting and in this space. I had never visited the Philipse Manor historic site before, and I've just been here for, I guess, a little better than a half hour, but I've had a little bit of a time moving about in the facility, and it's just a tremendous site, and I look forward to spending some time after the meeting and then coming back again. And I want to salute our fellow Commissioner Linda Tarrant-Reed for her work in just ensuring that this is a site where the history of African Americans and others are preserved. I guess the histories are preserved. Thank you, Jennifer.
Good afternoon. I am Derek Hamilton, and grateful to be in this space and on this commission as we build camaraderie and trust in our mutual commitments to bring about reparative justice in the state of New York.
All right, just real quick. This is the New York State Community Commission for Reparations Remedies. This happened yesterday. I'm broadcasting it live. This is their business meeting. So it's not the same as the public hearings that maybe some of y'all seen when I broadcasted live previously. So this is their business hearing. You still might be interested in it nonetheless. It's very worthwhile to be listening to it all. So we're going to go ahead and continue that in. I just want to let everybody know this is the business meeting, which is normally different from the public hearings. All right.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm at home here at Philipse Manor Hall, and I see so many of my friends, so I'm very happy. I'm Commissioner Linda Tarrant-Reed. I am the secretary of the commission, and I'm very overwhelmed with the work that we're doing because it is so necessary. And we have the right people on the commission to, do what we are charged to do. So I'm very happy and thank you for coming. Is it time to do the roll call?
Thank you. We're going to introduce ourselves over here.
Okay.
And so I'll begin. I am honored to be here. We are at the Urban League of Rochester, and we are on Joseph Avenue, and we've been in this building. I'm proud to serve as the president and CEO of the Urban League of Rochester, and happy to host this historic meeting right here in our building. My name is Chanel Hawkins, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of this great commission. And I thank all of my fellow commissioners for entrusting me with this incredible opportunity to serve in this capacity. So thank you. If I will lean to my left and wait for this next commissioner to introduce himself.
Commissioner Tim Hogues, Buffalo, New York. Glad to be here in Rochester. Awesome opportunity to be able to be with the other commissioners and learn from them and share our experiences. And I'm excited because we have movement. And so hopefully during this business meeting, we can discuss that movement and share the progress that the commission has made, both in the staffing
Recording
area,
in progress.
the staffing area and others. So thank you.
And to my right, we have our parliamentarian. So we'll make room for him to introduce himself.
This is Stuart Mitchell. I'm honored and very proud to play a small role in the good work that we're doing at the commission.
Well, thank you. So I think we've all been introduced, so we'll get started, and we will need a confirmation of quorum. So I will look to our Madam Secretary, and if you can confirm that we have established a quorum for today's business meeting on January 9th, 2026.
Thank you, Chair. We will do a roll call. Dr. Chanel Hawkins.
Chanel Hawkins is here.
Dr. Deborah Jenkins.
Present.
Linda Tarrant-Reed, present. Jennifer Jones Austin,
Present.
Lurie Daniel Favors,
Present.
Timothy Hogue,
Here.
Dr. Derek Hamilton.
Present.
The excused commissioners are Dr. Ron Daniels, Linda Brown Robinson, and I think that's it. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We will begin the next item on the agenda, which is to approve the minutes, and I will put it in the hands of our secretary, again, Linda Tarrant-Reed.
We're going to do, thank you, Chair. We are going to perform a consent agenda. All of the commissioners have been provided with the 3 minutes dated April 10th, 2025, August 1st, 2025, October 24th, 2025. So we need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Let's vote. All who say aye, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that's unanimous. The minutes have been approved for those 3 dates. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So next we'll move to the staff updates, and I would be honored to introduce who's here in Rochester, our new operations manager. I'll actually have her come to the table just for a moment to introduce herself. And Melody Harkness has been provided an opportunity to serve as the operations manager for the New York State Community Commissions on Reparation Remedies. Welcome, Melody Harkness.
So I'm Melody Harkness. Personally, I'm a North Carolina native, but followed in the footsteps of my ancestors who migrated to New York for better opportunities. So my mother's from Brooklyn. My grandmother is from Harlem. Professionally, I have a background in nonprofit legal services for most of my career. Over the past 5 years, I sort of transitioned into municipal and state government work. So as I told Commissioner Hogues and Commissioner Tarrant-Reed, I feel like this project is something I've been working my entire career to do. As an Africana Studies background and Master of Legal Studies, I'm very excited to participate in this process.
Well, thank you. We are glad and excited to work with you. So thank you, Melody Harkness. We have another introduction, a new staff member, and we'll introduce our general counsel. And I know that, I just want to confirm that general counsel is there with you, Vice Chair. And so we will introduce our general counsel. I will give it to Jennifer Jones Austin to just make a quick introduction and allow her to introduce herself.
Wonderful. Delighted to introduce, India Sneed Williams as our general counsel. She is, please come in, actually make yourself visible to the cameras as well. Working with a group titled IQEQ. They will serve as our general counsel, providing guidance for us to make sure that we are adhering to the rules of engagement as directed by the legislation, as well as just the rules for commissioners here in the state of New York, making sure that we are compliant and adherent at all points in time. India Sneed Williams has vast experience, as does her team. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and say a little bit about IQEQ.
Sure thing. Good afternoon. Thank you all for the honor of my career in life in serving as your general counsel to this amazing commission. I'm very prepared for the work that we are about to do. I come by way of Brooklyn and Queens, which is South New York. Yes, I'm a city girl. I got my undergrad out of CUNY, Baruch. I studied at Toro Law for my JD. LIU for my MBA. I worked in city council. I've worked for state assembly. I was a prosecutor for a short while. Went back to city council as a chief of staff. I worked in the mayor's office of New York City. I went in private sector for 4 years, and then I launched my own firm with the mission of actually serving MWBEs. So this is a historic moment for me, and I'm really looking forward to serving the commission, serving New York State, and ultimately serving our lineage and our future. So thank you.
We are excited about you.
We look forward to
Here's one
working
point.
with you.
What?
I know language is very important. My lineage, I merely mean history. I am not on any particular side. I wanted to be clear on that.
All right.
Well, thank you. We're glad that you joined us, and we look forward to partnering with you on this work. I'm going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is old business, and I want to remind us as commissioners and the community that we have a working definition for reparations, and we established that reparations is a process that authentically repairs and acknowledges the physical, cultural, psychological, mental, material, and or physical destruction, injury, and or harm of people and or society, including their identity. It includes processes of repairing, healing, and restoring a people and society who were injured due to their group identity in violation of their fundamental human rights by governments, corporations, institutions, and or individuals. Any questions or concerns about that as we move forward? Just as a reminder, we know this is our working definition, but are we still feeling good about that?
Well, we're not going back.
So if I may just share, we are not going back. We feel good, but we will be essentially kind of be making sure we have meat on the bones. We provide more description for some of the terms that are included here so people understand what we mean by harm. What is intended when we speak about human rights, let's say, as inclusive of economic rights and agency and the like. So this is the definition. We are working with this, but we do appreciate that we need to make sure that it is further defined so people have a really good understanding of what we mean when we speak using this definition.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones, Office Austin, and you've given us a preview because when we get to new business, we will talk about the discussion of the definition of harms. So we'll have some discussion on that later on. Any other comments about our working definition? I'm going to move on to, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I made room. I'm going to move on to the next item, which is our approved timeline. As a reminder, we are actively engaged in our consultant work, the public hearings and business meeting. Our draft report will be due to the commissioners. We identified as June 2026. The commission will have time to review and provide feedback July through August of 2026. Final revisions and acceptance will happen in September of 2026. And in December 2026, our plan is to submit the report to the governor and legislative body. And January through March of 2027, we'll have our community education and advocacy on recommendations. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions, but that is how we're moving forward. This is just a reminder to everyone about our timeline. Next, I'm going to go to our commission engagement and subcommittees. Our commissioners have agreed, and I'm not going to go through it all, but we've agreed to serve as liaisons to our vendors. And so we have an economist subcommittee, policy subcommittee, historian subcommittee, public education subcommittee, legal subcommittee, governance, operations, and community outreach. And each of the commissioners has decided to take on a role, and every commissioner is invited to participate on any subcommittee that they believe that they can contribute to. One of the things that now that we have our operations manager in place, we certainly will share those meeting dates when there are subcommittee meetings with all commissioners. And so if they have an interest, they can attend and contribute their knowledge and expertise. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
So Chair, when our subcommittees meet, I believe we have to keep in mind public open meetings law, and so we have to make sure that we don't have a quorum present, because I think that causes us to have to do some other things.
So we'll have which we have been doing for meetings when we have small groups registering for those meetings, and so that we make sure that we don't violate open meetings law. So thank you for that, highlighting that, but we've been maintaining that. So thank you so much. Next, I would like to move to the next section. And we're going to have a presentation. And so we're excited to hear from our vendor, the Policy Studies Associates, and they will share with us the framework for the reparations report. And so we are grateful to have Janine Hildreth here and Ayanna Platt. It'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And if the commission can look to the screen for our presentation from our partners from PSA. So welcome.
We need to unmute.
And if we could unmute Ayanna so that they can appropriately introduce themselves. And Dr. Janine is already unmuted, so I think we're fine there. But if we can there we go. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much. We are happy to be here to meet the full commission and to share where we are as we have launched this work a few months ago, and to get your feedback and your ideas on both the history and the policy work that we are doing. Again, my name is Janine Hildreth, my colleague Ayanna Platt. We're on screen, and two of our other colleagues, Leslie Anderson and Christina Russell, are here off screen. Leslie will be leading or driving the PowerPoint for us. So we're ready to dive in. Again, my name is Janine, and happy to be here and to meet the full commission. Dr. Jenkins and Ms. Tarrant Reed, we've been working with pretty closely with over the last few months. All right, so we'll get started right now. Today, we just want to provide an overview of how we're approaching the work, the scope of our work as we work to deliver a report on the history of enslavement and the follow-ons in New York State, and then also a policy analysis of laws, policies, and laws and policies that have contributed to racial inequity and disparities in New York State. We're going to preview, how we think these two reports will support the commission's final work, and then gather feedback from the commission to inform future work, either now or later on, that you can share with us about ways to kind of guide how we're approaching this work for you. Right. A little bit of background on PSA. We are a women-owned small business. We're based out of Washington, D.C., specializing in research, evaluation, policy analysis, technical assistance, capacity building, systems design, implementation, and professional development and training. We are all trained researchers using rigorous mixed methods research design. So we do both qualitative and quantitative research. And we pride ourselves in delivering reports, presentations that are relevant, accurate, and with practical applications for how our clients can use our work. We have a long history of working at all levels of government, federal, state, local, including New York State, New York City, and other government agencies. We work with nonprofits and foundations over our 40 years of work. So we have a long history of doing this work. And so our overall project goals, PSA has been selected to provide two deliverables to the commission: a historian report and a policy analyst project report. Again, my name is Janine. I'm leading the history report. And then Ayanna, who will be speaking shortly, will be leading the policy analyst report. And so each of these reports are designed to hopefully inform the commission's final report to the state around ways to address reparative justice and to provide reparative justice for the long history of discrimination, enslavement in New York State. Both of our projects are going to be informed by the UN framework on remedies and reparations, which provides guidance for how to do this work in a systematic, fair, and legal way. All right, and we have, as colleagues, Ayanna and I and our other team at PSA, are applying a joint research approach to this. And so each of the projects is multi-phase, again, doing systemic, historical, and legal analysis report, legal analysis, data collection and analysis. We each have a community engagement section, so we're doing more than looking at reading reports and looking at websites. We're also going to speak with people who are both active in the reparations work, and then also community members in New York who have been affected by some of these policies and systems. We're going to emphasize documentation of state actions and the impact of laws and policies that New York State has implemented over time, beginning from the earliest days of the colony established by the Dutch to now. And we're going to draw on a wide array of primary and secondary sources from existing physical and online repositories and archival collections to help make the case for that work. And all of this in service of providing evidence-based data to you to support actual recommendations that you want to make to the legislature and the governor, about how to address actions of repair and remedy. All right. Again, just an overview of some of the resources that we have drawn on for this work. And also, if you look, we've submitted 2 draft outlines, and you can also see a running bibliography on each of those of resources that we have accessed so far. And those bibliographies are updated regularly as we find new resources from these and other resources. All right. And one thing I mentioned earlier is that we're not just going to do the reading of reports and looking at websites. We also have a community engagement component for both projects. For the historian project, we're going to reach out to key organizations, identify with input from the commission. So we're thinking reaching out to historically black churches, local museums, community-based organizations, high school alumni organizations, people who have a long history and knowledge of how things have unfolded in New York City, New York State. And we want to conduct interviews and focus groups with selective group persons to kind of bring some life to the history that we read, that we connect and analyze. We're hoping to conduct for the history project about 20 individual interviews and 5 focus groups with like 6 to 8 people. So talking to upwards of 40 to 60 people about their experiences, again, to bring life to the history. And as Ayanna will detail shortly, she's going to do interviews with legal experts, activists, stakeholders who are actively involved in the reparations and remedies work nationally. So looking at New York, North Carolina, Illinois, where this work has already happened, and getting how their work and their experience can inform how the commission moves forward. All right, so now going a little bit deeper into how we're approaching the research, the historical research. So the first thing, again, reviewing the purpose and scope, is to provide a chronological state-centered history of New York's role in enslavement and building a racial hierarchy from 1626, when the first captured Africans were brought over, and then really linking it to the present, how those early activities around enslavement, emancipation, restriction of rights for Black and Brown, for Black persons, to the present. Again, we're centering state and local laws, policies, and government action, and not just focusing on isolated individuals and events, although those stories of individuals and events are going to again, bring to life the history, those conversations that we'll have with people. And again, the goal is to establish the historical foundation, how the long-lasting impact and actions that have happened that documented state-sanctioned harms, and again, with the goal of supporting the Commission's recommendations for reparations and remedies to the state legislature and governor at the end of this year or early next year. All right, so specifically for the historian research approach, the approach we're applying is, again, as we share the resources, some of the sites that we selected to gather our research, we're doing archival, primary, and secondary research, reading lots of articles, websites, getting documents as we can, pictures and slave logs, things like that. We're analyzing statutes, municipal ordinances, and governance structures. And we're going to combine all that into an era-based synthesis. So as we'll go through the next slide, we got 5 eras that we're looking at. And then the goal is like tracing the durability, the long-lasting impact of state-sanctioned racial hierarchy, beginning with enslavement to present day. Again, focusing on state level and local action that the state is trying to remedy and repair. And then we have the community engagement work, again, as I'd already discussed. All right, so again, going a little bit more in detail to how we're approaching this data collection and analysis. Again, systematic collecting a wide range of resources, documenting the establishment and progression of enslavement and what had followed on. And we're going to be evaluating each of those references, resources that we collect, looking at who wrote it, when it was written, what was the potential goal for that and why, and cross-verifying the data to make sure that we're not pulling in outliers of something that somebody's come up with, something that no other researcher or historian has an idea. We're not trying to bring new stuff, but really trying to gather and accurately represent the history of New York City and New York State. And again, incorporating those firsthand accounts of the lived experiences to bring to life what those state actions have meant on the individual level for individuals, their families, and their communities. And then all this coming in to develop a comprehensive historical report that links the past and the present with evidence, sound evidence base, and the ways that those past actions have affected the experiences and the opportunity of New York's residents, their Black residents, from, again, over the last 400 years since the colony of New York was first established. All right, and as I mentioned earlier, the report will be organized into 5 historical areas, looking at early enslavement and colonial governments, the movement to abolish slavery. Again, New York did it before most states in the Union, moving into Civil War and Reconstruction and what those meant for the formerly enslaved, Jim Crow, and the Great Migration and racial terror that New York was not immune to, and then moving into the civil rights and post-civil rights eras that we're living in now. And again, with the goal of emphasizing how the racial hierarchy has evolved. It's not the same as it was before, but the effects still remain. And so now we're going to just quickly go through a few of the key topics from each of the eras that we mentioned that we're going to explore in depth. So beginning in 1626, when the first captured Africans were brought by the Dutch via the West India Company. And then we'll look at how slavery expanded from the Isle of Manhattan through New York State and the legal hardening of enslavement as laws and policies were implemented that restricted, slave movement, where they could be, how many could gather, whether they could own property, all that growth over time. And one thing that has become clear in our research, there have been persistent efforts to resist the enslavement. And so the enslaved looked for ways to bargain and secure their freedom over time. And often those efforts were met with a backlash of further limiting and restricting the movement. The enslaved participated in the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812 in New York. And the Revolutionary War brought along greater understanding among both Black and white residents of the need to end slavery, with the first law for emancipation began around 1729. It was a gradual, slow process, but eventually in 1827, the enslaved were freed. And then in each of these eras, you'll see efforts toward slaves to own property, the enslaved to own property, and then ways that they were removed from that property by the government. After emancipation, 1828, right before the Civil War, again, more efforts among New York residents, formerly enslaved, to gain property and voting rights, pushed back by the local government to kind of limit those. You see an expansion of policing, especially with the Fugitive Slave Act, which Ayanna will talk about too, around gathering both free and enslaved and sending them to the South. And then as we lead up to the Civil War, there was even the mayor of New York at the time suggested that because slavery was a business for New York. So a lot of businesses were tied to the South and to the trades of the enslaved. And so the mayor of New York, before the secession, once suggested that the state that secede from the Union so they could continue maintaining those relationships with Southern enslavers. All right, and then we'll move into Civil War Reconstruction and enfranchisement. The Civil War, during that time, anti-war residents, white anti-war residents were concerned about if the war happened and the enslaved were free, there'd be an influx of formerly enslaved into New York City, which caused some tension because it would affect their ability to find work and maintain the society as they had known. As part of to restock the troops for the Civil War, the Union imposed a draft, and there was a big riot in New York City, by those opposed to the draft, which resulted in the death of many Black New Yorkers and the loss of property that was burned during the riot. So we'll go through that. And then the state assembly, as most states did, passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. But there was an effort, unsuccessful, by state Democrats to rescind ratification of the 15th Amendment, which provided men the right to vote. So a lot of push and pull around providing the formerly enslaved with more civil rights. Then we move into Jim Crow, racial terror. The Great Migration did happen. And so after the war, there was a significant movement of formerly enslaved and their family members from the South to the North, with many settling in New York State and New York City. That big influx fueled the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. But at the same time, residents continue to face challenges around securing adequate housing, education, employment. And New York City, in particular, became home to many of the national civil rights organizations. And New York was not immune to the Klan. There was an active Klan, especially in the north of New York. And there was at least one Black man, Robert Lewis, who was lynched in New York State. So push and pull around that. And then Harlem was the site of at least 2 race riots around policing and issues like that in the 30s and 40s. And New York State was actually one of the first states to disenfranchise based on a criminal record. So back, I think it was 1821, if I'm not mistaken, to disenfranchise based on criminal record and voting restrictions. And they also were one of the first states to make property restrictions for Black men to vote, that they had to own at least $250 of property if they could vote, with white New Yorkers not subject to that same law. As we move into World War I and World War II, Black New Yorkers were involved in both of those wars, including the Harlem Hellfighters in World War II. But as we all know, when those soldiers returned home, they still continue to face persistent discrimination. And then as they attempted to use GI benefits to buy housing, they faced restrictive covenants in areas like Levittown and Stuyvesant Town that denied access to equitable housing. And then we move into the civil rights era. We'll talk about, again, lingering impact around segregation and housing education, efforts in New York to desegregate schools, which were met with fierce organized resistance to ensure federal fair funding, equal funding for schools. We have urban renewal and gentrification, again, the persistent battle to own and maintain property in the 60s and 70s. Resulted in a lot of areas that were inhabited by Black residents being labeled as blighted and slums, and therefore justifying their clearance. And so the clearance of some of those under urban renewal resulted in the building of areas like Lincoln Center and the campus, some of the campus of Fordham, but displaced citizens who weren't actually given another place to go. So again, that displacement over time. And then, as we know, the 90s and 2000s, we saw a ramping up of aggressive policing policies like stop and frisk that resulted in the disproportionate incarceration of New Yorkers, especially Black men. And then we will wrap up the history report by saying that all of those things that happened over time have resulted in very inequitable life experience and opportunities for Black New Yorkers now. The state has a lot of data, plethora of data about racial disparities in terms of poverty, overall health. Black residents die on average 5 years earlier than their white counterparts. They have higher rates of incarceration, lower levels of employment, educational attainment, home ownership, and again, disproportionately represented in the arrested and incarcerated populations. And segregation in housing and in schools continues to be a marker of not just of New York and nationally overall. So that's the track that we're taking with Historian Report. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Ayanna, who's going to talk about how she's approaching the policy analyst work.
Thank you, Janine. I'm excited to be here. So as mentioned, I'm Ayanna, the research and policy analyst, and I'll follow a similar structure to walking you through the policy analyst section of the report that Janine did. I'll start by guiding you through the purpose and scope, then get into the research approach, and then I'll give an overview of the research report outline. So beginning with the purpose and scope, the purpose of my work is to produce an evidence-based report that directly informs the Commission's findings and recommendations. This report will trace how state laws and policies have historically and systemically produced racial injustice across key domains, and those domains include housing, education, criminal justice, health, voting and civil rights, and economic opportunity. And now I'll move to discuss the approach that I'm planning and that I am taking. So the emphasis here is on understanding how these systems developed over time and how earlier policy choices continue to shape present day conditions. So this analysis will also identify where legal and policy efforts have attempted to remedy harm, as well as where gaps persist, helping to clarify which interventions have been partial or insufficient or even uneven in their impact. And throughout this, the goal is to ground the Commission's work in evidence so the final report for which I'm writing the policy analyst section of can support clear, actionable recommendations for repair that are responsive to both historical injustice and contemporary realities. I'll now move to discuss the first phase of the work, which is already underway. So our work has begun with phase one, which is a comprehensive policy and legal landscape scan. In this phase, we're conducting a systematic review of laws, policies, and administrative practices governing New York State from 1626 to the present. The goal is here to understand how policy across different eras have shaped access, opportunity, and outcomes over time. This review will span colonial, state, and municipal levels of governance, recognizing that harm has often been produced and reinforced across multiple layers of government across multiple eras. And here we're focusing on identifying statutes, ordinances, court decisions, rules that are particularly relevant to Black New Yorkers' access to key domain areas, which of course are the housing, education, criminal justice, health, voting, and civil rights, as well as economic opportunity. So this phase ultimately establishes the policy and legal foundation for the rest of the analysis, allowing us to trace the through line, identify points of intervention, and situate current conditions with a longer historical and institutional context. So to start this process of phase one, we are beginning by, next slide, please. We're beginning to clearly define, oops, I'm sorry, Leslie, go back. Sorry about that. To start this process, we began by clearly defining the policy area, starting with one of 6 core domains, such as the housing, education, health, criminal justice, economic opportunity, or political participation. So from there, we're conducting systematic searches across both digital and archival sources, some of which you saw earlier on in the presentation. And then from there, we'll do a cross-verification to ensure accuracy and completeness. And then as we identify relevant laws and policies, we're documenting key details for each entry, including the date, jurisdiction, policy domain, and source, creating a structured record of all of our findings. And then each law and policy is encoded across multiple dimensions, including historical eras, policy domains, mechanisms through which harm or exclusion has operated, the policies stated to or inferred purpose, the level of governance, and the strength of the enforcement. Importantly, we're also tracking that through line between past and current harms, allowing us to identify recurring patterns. And then in phase 2 of our work, we're conducting interviews that Janine mentioned a bit ago with experts. So that's including policy experts, legal professionals, and advocates. Some of these individuals will include those who worked on the California Reparations Report, as well as leaders of organizations who are deeply engaged with reparations work to help inform our processes. This phase helps clarify how laws and policies operate in practice, where they break down, and how earlier policy choices continue to shape our present day outcomes. And then with phase 3, that's when we begin the drafting of the report and synthesizing findings across history, policy analysis, and also the community engagement interviews. The report will be organized by historical eras aligned with major shifts in law and governance, allowing us to show how racial hierarchy has persisted through policy design, implementation, and of course, enforcement. And that will trace the laws and policies from 1626 to the present, documenting the policy architecture that has perpetuated racial injustice across centuries. And importantly, these phases also identify laws that show promise, laws that require reform, and then laws that continue to reinforce racial injustice and should be reconsidered or repealed. And now I will walk you all through the report outline. So the report is organized chronologically, moving through major historical eras that correspond to the shifts in law, governance, and racial ordering in New York State. So we begin with enslavement and abolition, covering the period from 1626 through 1827. Then we move to examine post-emancipation and racial control and economic exclusion, followed by the Civil War period and the racial backlash that accompanied it. And then from there, we move into Reconstruction, tracing how brief expansions and rights were met with retrenchment and restructuring through law and policy. The report then goes to the Jim Crow era, examining how racial inequality was maintained. And then we turn to civil rights reform and the post-civil rights era, assessing both the gains achieved through reforms and also the many limits of these efforts in producing true structural change. And finally, the report addresses contemporary laws and policies from the 2000s to the present, situating current conditions within longer historical trajectory documented throughout the report. So this structure allows the Commission to locate present day challenges or present day policy challenges with clear historical framework. So now I'll walk you through the report. So just as Janine did, I'm going to quickly guide us through the report because I know we are a little short on time, but we're going to begin by discussing debt colonial rule. As slavery was introduced and legally sanctioned in New Netherland. In 1644, the colonial authorities created a system of so-called half freedom, essentially maintaining slavery as an institution. So about 40 people were extended this half freedom. And these individuals, they had to pay annual dues to the Dutch West India Company, and their children, however, remained enslaved. And then under British rule, those systems were expanded and more fully codified, further entrenching racialized slavery through law, property relations, and systemic structures. The period of abolition that followed was gradual and managed in ways that formally ended slavery, while preserving white political and economic power, limiting the scope of freedom and opportunity to the formerly enslaved. The report then turns to the post-emancipation period, marked by emancipation without full rights and the emergence of new forms of racial control. During this era, local laws and policing practices played a central role in enforcing the racial hierarchy, even as slavery had formally ended. At the federal level, policies such as the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 intensified insecurity and vulnerability for Black New Yorkers, reinforcing racial control across jurisdictions. The period surrounding the Civil War further exposed those racial and class inequities with wartime policies, deepening disparities rather than resolving them. For example, you have the Federal Conscription Act of 1863. And then now we'll move to Reconstruction. So with Reconstruction, the era marks a period of formal constitutional change alongside significant limits in practice. We have, in this period, New York has ratified the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, reflecting the national shift toward the formal abolition of slavery and the expansion of legal rights. At the same time, however, despite these constitutional protections, voting rights were narrowed in practice through both policy and administration. And we can move to the Jim Crow era. So this section of the report examines how racial hierarchy was maintained in New York through structures and policy designed during the Jim Crow era. Systematic structures during this period enabled racial exclusion. So New York's home rule system placed significant authority over education, housing, and policing at the local level, allowing racial inequality to persist through local decisions. And for example, with housing and urban development policies during this era, you have the multiple dwelling regulations, urban renewal programs, and publicly supported housing initiatives, which all played a significant role in reinforcing racialized displacement and segregated occupancy. And then during this time, we also do have a bit of a landmark case here. So this period also includes a partial break from exclusionary practice. For example, we have the Ives-Quinn Anti-Discrimination Law of 1945, which marked an early effort to prohibit employment discrimination and created a state-level enforcement body. And then we can move on to civil rights movement and post-civil rights era section. So this section of the report examines the civil rights era and its aftermath, focusing on the limits of legal reform in producing real, tangible structural change. So during this period, New York operated within an expanded civil rights legal framework, but the reach of those reforms were often constrained by policy design and implementation. For example, in education, the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision prompted desegregation reviews nationwide. In New York, however, the state relied heavily on neighborhood-based school zoning, which preserved racial segregation in practice, despite the absence of the formerly segregated school laws. And housing, we can keep going through the final section. So the final section of the report focuses on laws and policies that were intended to remedy racial injustice in the contemporary period. So by the early 2000s, New York had developed some civil rights and anti-discrimination infrastructure. However, as we all know, the framework has largely operated through reactive case-by-case enforcement, limiting its ability to address systematic and systemic harm. In education and youth opportunity, litigation such as the Campaign for Fiscal Equity versus State of New York clarify the state's constitutional obligation to provide a sound basic education. While the decision established an important legal standard, implementation has remained largely uneven. And since we're short on time, I think we can move to the timeline and milestones and next steps. So for the past few months or so, my colleague Janine and I, as well as our team, have been working on launching the project and engaging in ongoing submissions to the commission for our draft research overview, as well as our work plan that includes our timeline. We've also moved towards making those pieces or those items more finalized and submitting to the commission for feedback. And we are currently working on protocols for interviews with for the community engagement piece of this work. And the interviews will be happening fairly soon. And then we also do plan to draft a sample report section for the commission to review and give us feedback for, just so that we are aligned in our thinking for what each section of our reports will look like in the end. And then I'll pass it along to Janine for next steps.
All right, so thank you again. As Ayanna mentioned, we're going to draft a section for the report for commission review. We're available for ongoing bi-monthly presentations to the commission to share progress and feedback on our emerging findings, and we will continue to work with Commissioners Tarrant Reed and Jenkins for guidance as we move through this process. So I know we're a little over time, so apologies. But if the commission has any questions or guidance for us as we continue moving this work forward, we're happy to hear.
Thank you, Team PSA. We're grateful to learn about the tremendous work that you all have been doing. I want to pause to recognize that this is a lot of work. And you've got, if you go back to that timeline is pretty aggressive, and we'll need you to keep to that because we know that we have a timeline and we're looking for our draft full report by June of 2026. So I just want to acknowledge that you have a tremendous effort, and we're grateful for the start. I have questions. I know my colleagues here have questions, and thank you again. If you could stick around for questions. I will yield the floor to our commissioners in Yonkers if they have questions. And I see Dr. Derek. Dr. Derek, I knew that you had a question. I saw you taking notes over there. But I want to just acknowledge that Commissioner Linda Tarrant-Reed and Commissioners Jenkins, Vice Chair Jenkins, have been working closely with Team PSA as they are the liaison. So I just want to thank them for their efforts and working closely with them on behalf of the commission. And they provide direct feedback, but here is an opportunity today for the full commission to review the work and the efforts that you've been working on and provide access to us for feedback. So I see that Dr. Derek has his hand raised. We'll yield the floor to Dr. Derek, and then next will be Commissioner Jones-Austin.
I'll begin with gratitude. This is comprehensive and awesome and well thought through, and gives me a lot of faith that we're gonna get a great product at the end. I have basically 3 points of query. I'd want to raise. One is with the history report. I wonder if we'll be able to capture the ways in which incidents in history, the system of slavery itself, links to modern, not only capitalism, but New York State in particular benefits from finance and insurance industries. Will the report, linking the work of people like Eric Williams and Ed Baptiste, be able to demonstrate or examine the links between the system of chattel slavery and modern financial markets for a place like New York State, which disproportionately benefits from that? That's query one. Maybe I'll do the second two real quick. The second one is with regards to the policy examination. There's an economist, Richard America from Georgetown University, who has used the term unjust enrichment. So I'm wondering, in addition to the ways in which policy might have disadvantaged populations, will we be able to examine the concept of unjust enrichment, the ways in which privilege or benefit might have accrued as a result of somebody else's demise from a policy framework? And then the final query is with regards to areas of domains in the policy analysis. I know there's home ownership there, but I wonder the concept of wealth more broadly. Should we add a lens towards wealth? And then, in addition to criminal justice, what about free mobility itself? Transportation as a domain, and simply the human capacity to traverse space.
If I may jump in, first I want to commend you at PSA for the work that you've done. I echo the sentiments of gratitude that were expressed by Commissioner Hamilton. And I want to thank our fellow commissioners for their leadership, their guidance, supporting this effort at every turn. It's tremendous, tremendous. In some ways, I'm not surprised that some of my thunder, if you will, was stolen by Commissioner Hamilton. Sometimes we think very similarly, and I too was centering on the importance of looking at wealth and how wealth in America, essentially, from the very beginnings, all of this has been about political and economic power and imbalance. And if we do not center on like wealth and wealth policy, and how that has been stood up to the advantage of some at the expense of others, looking at things such as even tax policy, I think we missed something. And so I would ask us to look there, as well as he said, transportation policy. Transportation policy was brought in some ways covertly, You know, when we did away with laws that allowed for overt discrimination to keep racial practices and racial harms in place. And so I think we need to pay more specific attention to transportation policy and law. And then thirdly and fourthly, environmental policy. That's not in there, and we cannot do this work without looking at how environmental laws have been stood up to perpetuate racial injustice and all the harms that result. And then fourthly, social policy. And there I lean very much in on covert policy in systems and structures that, you know, the laws in and of themselves, the policies do not necessarily suggest that we are treating Black Americans differently than others, but the way that these policies are stood up. And then I guess I would say overarching, but I'm going to lean in with social policy because you can find the greatest examples there. When presenting about policy, you talked about policies that have sought to uphold injustice. And what I couldn't help but think about was, are you centering on design, implementation, and impact? Because the way that our laws and our policies have worked in America is that in many instances, if you look at them at face, they may appear to be race neutral. Now, the laws and the policies of years and centuries past, not so much. But over the course of the last, I'd say 50 to 100 years, we've had many policies, many laws that at face, GI Bill being one, race neutral, but by design, implementation, and impact, were intended to uphold racial injustice. So those are just more than considerations. They are, it is a, I am asking that we look at these matters through those lenses. It is not just the overt. It is very often the covert. You know, we've got to remember, and you may have heard me say this before, when Commissioners Hamilton, Daniel Favors, and I did the work at the New York City level on racial justice, the General Counsel to Bishop Desmond Tutu said to me, in many, many words, but I boiled it down to this: those who created the system created it to persist. And so not every law is an obvious harm, but there are many laws out there, even our tax policies, our tax laws, that are designed to perpetuate these harms from the beginning and persisting. So I can talk more with you offline about that, but great work. And I am heartened, as is Commissioner Hamilton, by the work that has been done. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. I just want to say congratulations, both of you. We have worked hard together, and the product that has been produced shows the work. And it also is an incredibly great framework to launch the final report. There are some things that, we will discuss in our upcoming meetings. I think one of the areas that you didn't cover was the use of subject matter contributors. Commissioner Hamilton named several, and those are people, we have a list. Those are people that will actually bring the expertise to the individual domain areas that you talked about. So that's very important. Also, I think uplifting the cultural aspect of African Americans in New York State. We have an incredibly strong cultural presence, and that will be recognized. But again, great work. We are off to a running start. We have like 9 months to actually get this product to its final stage. So I thank you.
If I may ask one more question on the historical side of the report. The community engagement. What is the thinking around or concerning 20 community interviews? And was it focus groups of 6 to 8 persons? I'd like more understanding around concerning, are you seeking representative sampling? But that would not be deemed statistically significant, right? Or would it, tell me what the thinking is there.
Yeah, it's not, we're not planning. Yeah, it's not going to be statistically significant, but we do want it to be representative of the state as a whole, to speak with people from different areas of the state, different types of organizations. But you're not going to be able to run statistical analysis, but we do want to work with you and others to make sure it's as representative within our resources as we can make it.
I think we need to really clarify. The commission is in the process of hiring a public education coordinator who will be doing that work. So in order for us not to replicate, you will be engaged with them. The other part of the public engagement are the testimonies from all of the public hearings. Also, the documentation from our reparations phone line, where people call in and give their testimony. So it's really reviewing all of the public hearing video and really coming away with information that's going to inform the report.
Yes, definitely. I did not highlight that, but those are definitely source information that we're going to use for that too.
Can I ask a question just related to that? And I know we said testimony, making sure I see we pause for a second, but how will you analyze for themes, policies that are presented from the public testimonies? Can you talk a little bit about how you use that data?
Yeah, for the history part, we're gonna treat it as a data source. We're gonna code it using that similar coding frame that we're going to use for some of the research to highlight, Ms. Smith spoke about, displacement and losing her home or, her family being forced to move. And we'll tie that to the research. So it's going to be always linked to, we're going to work to try to link those individual or personal accounts to the research, to the broader research that we have, that we'll be collecting.
Thank you. One other question related to a question that Dr. Derek Hamilton asked, or Commissioner Hamilton asked about the, I wanted to know how you will use the benefits, how New York benefited from slavery and financial institutions, because I know earlier you talked about just governance structures, but I think if you can talk a little bit of how you'll make that connection of how they worked in collaboration with one another to create some exclusion and disproportionate economic gains for Black New Yorkers. So I'm interested in learning more about that.
Yeah, we will definitely include that because we know that the insurance business, financial markets, all of that benefited from the slave. 40% roughly of New York business was slave-centered prior to the Civil War. So we'll definitely cover that and look for research. Dr. Hamilton gave us a couple names to look at, and that if they're SMCs or we read their research, we'll definitely incorporate that into our work.
Thank you.
So I do want to briefly go back to Dr. Hamilton. So he asked a question, and there was a bunch of questions in there. So I wanted to know if he was more making a statement or if you wanted to follow up, Dr. Hamilton, for discussion with our contractors here. Or are you good?
Well, number one, they've already answered that they're going to explore that. That's good. But I'm curious if there are reactions to the concept of unjust enrichment, and then as well as Jennifer talked about, transportation policy, but even more broadly, free mobility, just the capability of movement in society. Mm-hmm. If those, yes. Okay.
No.
Oh, yeah, no, that's it. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to PSA and to Janine and Ayana for this great work that you have started. I'm really happy with what the colleagues have added onto your table because it's not a whole lot. I took all the notes from Dr. Hamilton and Commissioner Jennifer Jones Austin. And I'll be working along with you to try to ensure that those things are definitely in there. I know we're taking notes as well. Your work is really well done. One question I did have, and I think this is to you, Janine.
Mhm.
In your opening slides, you mentioned a standardized data coding and management system. Just want to know if that's a proprietary system that you're using, or is there something that is currently on the market that will be used?
It's well, the coding, we use a platform called Atlas TI, which is used for qualitative data. And so as you read through and you upload articles, summaries and things like that, you can identify, highlight sections, apply a code, and then it's got really good analytic capabilities that you can look across different articles. So I can say, show me everything that we've uploaded that deals with, I don't know, the slave, half freedom, that Ayanna mentioned. We can look across sites, or let's show me everything that we've coded that talks about displacement. And so then we can look at it, and they'll be coded by area, and it'll allow us to look across, because as you see, our growing reference list is pretty large. And so kind of helping us manage all of that information so that we're not missing everything. And then again, will help us, through the analysis, hopefully help us see connections that maybe in reading all this different stuff, maybe we didn't see, but when you've, rejiggered how the information comes together, you can see other patterns, maybe for new insights or new ideas.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad to know that you're using Atlas TI. I've used it and I've worked with it, and I'm interested as we prepare to scan for, or have a discussion about harms, and you've listed many of the harms, but I think it would be useful for us even to grab some of the data from the public hearing for the commission. So I wonder how we'll use that. And so even if we, wanted to know themes on harms that had come up in the public hearings, on the phone calls, sharing that data with the commission. So as we develop those definitions will be helpful. And so that two-way feedback or sharing of information from some of the themes that you learn from Atlas TI is going to be helpful to us to help inform our work. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So real briefly, Commissioner Jenkins and Commissioner Tarrant Reed, once again, thank you. And PSA, thank you so much. My quick question is for if we have recommendations for subject matter experts or individuals we believe you should have conversation with, commissioners, how should commissioners go about doing that?
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, but you are Dr.
Right.
Jenkins.
We have an extensive list that was compiled from the commissioners and from research that Commissioner Jenkins and I have performed. So PSA is in possession of that list with the contacts. So that is the list. And we encourage our commissioners to please add, because each one of you are specialized experts in your field. So we will send that list out, Commissioner Jenkins and I, and ask for any additions that you may have.
So is that just an email to the two of you, or how should we accomplish that? Because hearing this outline has sparked some thought on individuals that might be able to contribute.
Yes. You should email directly to Commissioner Jenkins and myself.
Okay, thank you.
And the other area I think we wanted to talk about was Black wealth in particular, and that having to do with real estate, redlining, and banking practices. So put together in a package like that will really give us the ability to make the case for reparations in the absence of Black wealth.
I want to give a quick shout out to Dorothy Brown, who has a new book coming out. This is somewhat self-serving, but I also wanted to publicly bring that tax law expert into the domain as somebody that we consider a consultant.
Great.
Let me just add to what both Dr. Hamilton and Commissioner Tarrant Reed said in terms of the subject matter experts. Could you please also include Commissioners Daniel Favors and Dr. Ron Daniels on that list. And here's why for the public. We know what we're doing internally, but we are a subcommittee charged with creating our monthly themes based upon a living document of running experts. So we are constantly looking to new experts and adding to that list, who will then go to the list that, so it's like bifurcated, right? This is the standing subcommittee for subject matter experts, who you all see at all of our tests, at all of our public hearings, but they may migrate into the greater work, if that makes sense. But please include Commissioners Daniel Favors and Dr. Ron Daniels in any.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, thank you.
And might I add, please,
Has been holding for the floor. Just wanted to make sure I want to acknowledge that she's been waiting.
okay, this will be quick. I also want Dr. Deborah Jenkins to be added to that list.
She's on.
She's on the list.
No, she's not.
Laura.
Commissioner Daniel Favors, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Jenkins, thank you for the reframing with regards to the subject matter expert committee. I just wanted to also re-emphasize the need for intense focus on the covert and non-explicitly stated forms of racism and oppression that people of African descent experience, particularly in light of the fact that we are now in an environment where the administration has indicated a withdrawal from disparate impact legal analysis as it pertains to the impact of racism on Black people, yes, but anyone who would have a claim of this nature or any other form of discriminatory impact. And because of that, and because disparate impact is something that we in the legal community have relied upon extensively, and that is a tool no longer, if the administration has its way, that will no longer be as readily available. I think it is really important to have that be a part of not just this most current era, but even going back and looking in the historical records to seeing even prior to this current moment, what were some of those other unstated disparate impacts that our communities experience that may not have been contained within the body or the text of the law itself. I would also ask, just for the sake of the public, and thank you so much for this work. For those of us who are fans of history and appreciate reading through our experiences, I think that your draft report is very informative. But I would just ask if you could, for the sake of the public, because we want to make sure that the public is also crystal clear about how all of these disparate parts come together. Can you please explain how your report and the ultimate report that will go before the legislature, which will contain the recommendations, this review of the history and the recommendations and remedies that we as a commission have determined should be considered and voted upon. Can you please talk about how this report informs that part of the process so that the public is aware as to how these seemingly disparate parts come together in this final product?
Yeah, we are going to work with Commissioners Terrence Reed, Commissioner Jenkins, when the new executive director comes on, to figure out how all these pieces do come together, the history, the policy analysis, the economic analysis. I know you're in the process of hiring economists, how all that comes together to create that final report that does make a compelling statement that the public can understand, and that will, and it's digestible, because we don't want to you want it to be complete, but you want people to actually read it and understand. So we'll work with Commissioner Terrence Reed, Commissioner Jenkins, the executive director, like how all this work comes together in one final report.
No, if I may jump in, the commissioner's question and your response raises for me the kind of the chicken egg question. Like, what comes first? So it's like, is the history and the historical and is the historical analysis and the policy analysis going to inform our thinking and decisions about, we're going to talk in a few minutes about harm, about eligibility, or is it that you ask and answer the question first with respect to eligibility and harm, and then you further, develop your policy and historical research and analysis? Do you get where I'm going? It's like, what is the question that we're answering? So are we answering it to get to a question about eligibility? Or have we made a determination about eligibility, which then helps us to appreciate what are the policies and laws that we need to further explore with the history? How do we do that?
And so Commissioner Jones Austin, you'll see in the next section, I said that we needed some research questions to guide our work. And so what are the research questions that we want to develop to guide the work so that we can establish a pathway? And I think that that's why you're asking that question, which is coming first, right? Because we haven't established what will be our research questions. And so my hope is that we'll have that conversation at the next stage, but I certainly will lean to Janine and Ayana if they want to answer that in any way. But that's what I believe that we needed to have some
This
research.
is like foundational.
Yes, absolutely.
Like a solid foundation that then informs our thinking and then allows for us to go back and delve into, I don't want to say more deeply, but into areas.
Right. And also for the commission to come up with recommendations for the legislature.
Okay.
That is not the role of PSA. And really, with the bifurcated reports, from my perspective, the reports are going to be combined and the data is going to drive the case for reparations. So at every step of the way, the economics and the lack of wealth and the harm that we as African Americans in New York State have experienced as a result of the institution of slavery, that has to be quantified. And Derek Hamilton is going to do that for us. But I mean, you understand where this is going. There has to be a formula that's going to, and so the other thing is, you know, we also have to figure out who is eligible for reparations. And that is going to be based on the law that the legislature, New York State legislature passed, because the eligibility requirements are in that law, which you can read on the website, the reparations.
And just because Commissioner Tarrant Reed inserted the word law, I don't want us to forget that we have a brand spanking new general counsel who should also be centered in the report writing, and especially as it relates to leading us to the question that Commissioner Jones Austin just asked us, asked of you, as a matter of fact. She's here, utilize her. Am I speaking? Okay. So we just want to make sure that in all of our walk towards getting this ultimately to the governor and the legislators, her work, her knowledge and expertise is also centered in it all, if that makes sense to everyone.
We certainly imagine that at future meetings, all of our consultants, vendors will be here, and these conversations will be much deeper as we get into the body of work that we're preparing, but sharing the other bodies of work with our vendors, like our general counsel and others that are coming on board. So again, we thank you for the great work that you've been doing. We look forward to future presentations. We hope you stay on because we have some questions, a discussion about harms and what is going to be, how do we get to our guiding research questions so that we can begin to answer. So we hope you stay with us. Any other questions, commissioners, before we end this section? Yes, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
So thank you. So next I want to go to just a quick update for the commissioners on our hiring updates. I heard someone allude to the executive director, and as a quick update, we have identified the executive director. As you know, we partner with OGS, the Office of General Services, to help us with the commission with this procurement policy and processes. And so we've identified the firm or candidate that will be working alongside of us. And so more to come on that, but that position is closed and we've identified the candidate. Next, with our economist position, I am excited to share the very same news that we've identified a firm or candidate for that position. More to come. We are just awaiting for the next steps and approvals and our partner organization. I want to thank them. OGS has been an incredible partner to the commission in helping us to guide our work. And we meet with them regularly to continue to advance our logistical work forward. So thank you to that team there. And then lastly, more good news. We've identified a candidate or firm for the education coordinator. So thank you. And we expect to have more information. I want to thank all of the commissioners because most don't know that we are volunteers. And I have to say that because we've heard several statements that we were being paid. None of us are being paid for this work. And I want to thank you, commissioners, for this great work that you're doing because we behind the scenes are interviewing these candidates, and this is a lot of work. And going through the process of reading the incredible proposals that are prepared, and these are not 10-page proposals. They are long proposals, and we appreciate every consultant that has put forth the effort to work with us. We appreciate them. But we've made our selections. And so thank you, commissioners, for your behind the scene work to get these incredible, brilliant minds to partner with the commission. So I want to give you all a round of applause for your volunteer efforts. And I'm going to keep saying that so everyone is clear that this is our service to the great state of New York, but also to our ancestors and to New Yorkers that want to support these next steps. So thank you. Next, I will go to new business. And on new business, we have a discussion on the working definition of harm and the research questions. 2 upcoming public hearings. So I think I'm going to go backwards and do that first. The upcoming, that'll be easier. We have a public hearing on January 17th in Binghamton, New York. We will be in the southern tier. If you all notice that we are trying on January 17th. I'm going to give the floor to Commissioner Jenkins because she will be leading that effort. And if she wants to say anything more about the hearing on January 17th in Binghamton, New York, and I know we'll be at the Legion there.
Well, we welcome everyone to come, definitely be there. The subcommittee and we were working feverishly to try to secure speakers. This has been the most difficult one to book speakers for because what we did is we went backwards trying to restore some of the experts that we had in the past. And then we received possible names from our elected official in that area, and they weren't all available. And it's very difficult. We are all very busy. As the chair just said, we have a difficult time sometimes meeting up, but then ultimately we do it. I don't have the names right at my disposal for our meeting, but that is going out. I think it has already gone out in our press release for the 17th. I don't want to mention one name without the other because I just don't recall. But we are looking forward to it. And so the theme for next week's meeting is next week. We heard from the public.
Learn more about it.
It froze.
Is it?
Did we freeze?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You can go to our website at ny.gov/reparations, read the press release. We will be at the Legion in Binghamton, New York on Saturday, the 17th, and learn more about our public hearing. Everyone is welcome. We look forward to hearing your voices. Can you all hear me okay?
Now.
Now.
Okay. Sorry, we're having some internet issues. Next, I want to let you know, if you all can't hear me, if everyone can hear me, just raise your hand, thumbs up, just to make sure. Good, thank you. All right, I want to share that we will also be at the NYSA BPRHAL caucus in February. We will hold a workshop, and that workshop we believe will be on February 14th. And so we look forward to seeing folks at the hearing. More information to come once we get the date, but we look forward to being at the caucus in Albany, New York on February 14th. Any questions about that? For more information, for those that are watching online, please visit our website. You can watch every meeting. You can connect with us, learn more about the work that we're doing, but also you can share your public testimony. You don't have to attend the meeting in Binghamton, although we want to see you in Binghamton, New York, on Saturday, the 17th of January at the Legion. But also you can join online and email us, or you can call us at 518-473-3997, and you can call in your public testimony. Again, the website is ny.gov/reparations. I want to pause, and so we can make room for our discussion on defining the harm and our research questions. Any questions before we go forward? Okay, with no questions, I want to thank Commissioner Jones Austin. We were in an executive committee meeting, and we lifted the conversation on, we've defined reparations. We have a working definition for reparations, which includes, in the definition, we mention harm. And we mention harms and we talk about the harms, but we have not identified the harms. And in the conversation that we just learned with PSA mentioned our policy studies associates. They mentioned many harms. They mentioned economic harms, housing harms, political harms, health harms. Many harms were mentioned. And so we, Jennifer Jones Austin, Commissioner Jones Austin, lifted that we should, as a commission, begin to identify and have some listing or working definition of harms. And so here we're opening this discussion for that. One of the things that I heard is that from PSA could probably do some work in Atlas TI and do some scanning for themes of harms and provide us a list too. But I want us to begin to have some conversations on drafting a working definition for harms. So I will open the floor for conversation and yield to Commissioner Jones Austin for this conversation.
So thank you, Chair. I will simply add that as we talked about this, we found ourselves, raising questions about when we think about reparations and reparations for harm, to address harms or redress harms. Are we talking economic harms? Are we talking psychological, emotional, mental harms? Are we talking educational harms? Are we talking environmental harms? But the importance of, as we think about the reparative work to be done, making sure that we're beginning to define what we mean, because we could find ourselves producing a report with a set of recommendations that centers simply on economic without doing any work around, say, cultural harm or community harm. Physical harm. We might find ourselves doing work around economic reparative work, but not environmental injustice. And so the importance of us as a body beginning to define, not necessarily definitively at this point or decisively, but what we're thinking.
A working draft, just like we've done for reparations.
That then is informed, as you said, Chair, by the research.
Yes.
And I think that's a very good point that you bring up. And so I think I've been at pretty much every public hearing and listening to the testimony and the suggestions of individuals. And I think it has predominantly focused on economic from the public. And so I think it is good that we are having this conversation because part of our work is to educate the public as well. And so as we talk about these harms, I think it's good for us to start here and move forward.
Chair, if I may, for those who were not on the call that we had, share a little bit about what prompted us to lean in and look at this, because we hadn't been thinking about this. We were given a presentation during which one of the presenters was talking about reparations that had been paid out for to various persons and communities for certain harms. And I think one of the issues, or one of the forms of reparation, and it was like, we talked about whether or not it was actual reparation or how to think about it, but talked about 9/11 and and people who were affected by 9/11, higher rates of cancers, environmental cancers, receiving compensation from the government. And so then that led us to thinking about, well, we do know that in America, as we were alluding to earlier, there have been environmental injustices, exacted upon people of African descent. And we know that your economic situation has a lot to do with the environments in which you live and work and move about. We see all across the nation, in certain places and spaces. I'm thinking right now, especially places in the South, and I think about like Louisiana, just as one, where you see high levels of cancer for people of African descent because of exposure to industrial complexes that have emitted gases that have proven harmful. You see in other places where higher rates of other form, breast cancer and the like, lung cancer. And so the issue arose because we realized if we just centered on economic, are we leaving out a whole swath, the whole body of people for decades that have experienced racial injustice that began with slavery and continues?
And can I just weigh in? And I thank you so much, Commissioner Jones Austin, because I've just been on my reading thing. How we all say we're going to read a certain number of books this year. So I went back to Dr. Calvin Schremerhorn's book, Plunder. He was one of our guests. And in the book, he talks about the fact that after Reconstruction, of course, we went into sharecropping primarily. By the turn of the century, 1900, all of the descendants of the former enslavers had regained all their lost wealth from the loss of our ancestors no longer working on their plantations for free. So I also put his book together with Dr. Joy DeGruy, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. It is so not what your mind initially tells you, post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's not. And I think even for us to consider harms, and I'm not trying to give homework, but listening briefly to Commissioner Daniel Favors' serious program this morning on my way in, she's given her audience an assignment to go through Project 2021 and 2025, and you can correct me if the assignment is wrong. She's given them an assignment to go through Project 2025, 5 pages a day or something to that effect. Review it and write a paragraph about what they are learning so that they can be in the now of it all. I feel that we should do something similar with post-traumatic slave syndrome so that we can actually codify what harms really mean, considering all the things that Commissioner Jones Austin just said. And there might be some categories that she may not have included, but there are so many more than just economic harms. And we really need to get our community to understand it's not about write the check only. Right. I'm not trying to get you out of work, Dr. Hamilton, but
I don't know where I became the father for. I've been quiet, but I will raise my hand and get in it.
He's the stated economist here on the panel. So I'm just saying that we really need to do our homework as a commission so we can understand it's not only about money, right? Right. There are so many other harms, maternal, and that came up in that meeting too. Yes. Maternal child deaths. We are suffering. Serena Williams, the best tennis player of our modern era, she experienced this. So we can do our homework. I'm not saying you must give us that assignment, but I do believe that this is some research that we need to do before we begin the process of codifying what harms are, because we don't want to exclude anything. I yield.
And I also think it's important to understand that there's structural harms and environmental harms, health harms. There's so many different categories. So I would like the idea of an assignment so we can do our, due diligence. And I think that's an incredibly important, definition that we should become comfortable with. So I
See
think
that two commissioners have their hands up. Thank you, Commissioner Tarrant Reed. But I wanted to know from PSA, how soon could they give us maybe a scan of theme for harms to inform our research, as well as we're giving ourselves homework assignments. At least that will help us understand the many types of harms that are coming up in the themes that we're hearing in the public hearings, and in the testimony that's been provided online. So let me just make room for you all to bring the two researchers back up. And then I see Commissioner Daniel Favors. Uh-oh. Commissioner Daniel Favors, do you want to respond? Do you want to wait for PSA?
Yes, no, I thank you I think I might have frozen for just a little bit, so all my sound went out. Thank you so much. And Commissioner Jenkins, I had to chuckle a little bit. I'm glad the assignment is taking foot. It was actually to read 3 and write 1, because I know as Americans, literacy is something that many of us struggle with, but 3 pages of anything at this point, but preferably a book. Project 2025 is also a very important reading, but I do thank you so much for referencing that. But I wanted to also offer that, and I encourage I request the other legal minds on the commission to also chime in. But when I'm thinking about a definition of harm, and to our associates at PSA, I look forward to how you are going to respond to this as well. I'm thinking by default in terms of legal definitions. And when we're looking at legal definitions, we're talking about any detrimental loss, damage, or injury to your body, your rights, your reputation, your property. It encompasses both physical and material detriment. And it's somewhat, in some cases, it can be so encompassing, and it can speak to the overt, to the covert. But I wonder whether we can look at the legal definitions for what constitutes harm and have that as a basis, particularly because this is going to be an effort that has to withstand the attacks that we know will be hurled against it. And I'm wondering if that might be an informative place, if not perhaps to start, to at least incorporate into our discussions, that we at least know how the law contemplates what harms can look like and how all-encompassing they can be. And I just offer that as a way of helping us to figure out not necessarily chicken versus egg, but how the sausage gets made, if I may.
Commissioner Hamilton?
So a couple of responses. Certainly, there were harms committed beyond material harms directed at African descendants who were enslaved in America. We also need to be careful that we don't make the project unwieldy with all the range of harms that can be done, but having some systematic approach is valuable.
Absolutely.
It is a misunderstanding to think of economics as strictly an outcome and not understanding the input it also serves as it relates to protection from harms. So to think that they're just that discrete, we would be making a mistake. Ultimately, what we might be concerned about is power, to which there are multiple dimensions of power, including economic, which might be one of the more paramount ones. So also, when we think about proportion, it is probably the case, it is the case that economics does bear a larger share of both harm as well as agency if we want to correct that harm. So we need to be careful not to, in our quest to be inclusive, disproportionately impact our approach and study. And then here's just one other thing I want to end with, which is post-traumatic slave syndrome. Frankly, I think it's a racist trope to emphasize on that. And it's not an intentional racist trope, but if we compared something like intergenerational material harm, we can quantify that, we can measure that, and we can demonstrate its impact. But my understanding of some psychological harm that gets passed down from one generation to the next and being responsible for some affect that leads to disparity, I have not seen compelling evidence that that's true. And I have concern that it reduces to almost this outcome is the result of some aspect of individual or cultural aptitude or behavior in this population, which without evidence, in my view, reduces to a racist trope.
Let me ask you a question. I appreciate what you're sharing. In my
Can you
mind,
pull the mic closer to you? I think the mics are really far on the table. Yeah, there you go.
I was sharing that I appreciate what Dr. Hamilton has expressed, and my mind immediately centered on the deprivation of economic opportunity in densely populated communities of people of African descent, like the lack of capital, economic opportunity, business, industry. And through a social science lens and frame, how that, research has shown how that has impacted the thinking of people about what is possible, like the withholding of resources within a community, and the ability to then build within the community, not just from an economic resource availability, but the mindset of what is possible. I'm just sharing that with you.
Yeah, and I give two quick responses. One, you've stated the harm directly to begin with, which is the lack of economic opportunity. And then two, you have to come up with an intergenerational mechanism of how the psychological trauma of one generation is passed down to another generation. And that mechanism has not been established.
So I appreciate the point that you're making. What I am doing in this moment is just essentially surfacing what, when people talk about this, what they're thinking, like I don't want to go too far with this, but the reason that in America and in Europe, like the construct of, quote, the ghetto, to keep people in a marginal state and to somehow affect the psyche. Now, yes, it may not be, like, research does not bear it out, and you can't necessarily substantiate it with quantitative, like findings and what have you, but there is a harm that has attended our people.
It's called the ghetto. Right? You've stated it, right?
I think we may be saying the same thing in some respects, but what I'm actually just trying to speak to is there is something here. Now, we may not be able to do anything with it, and we may have to look at the core economic deprivation as the harm. But I'm just saying, like, when we talk about trauma is real, you may not be able to always quantify it.
And to be clear, we're not having a conversation about whether there's trauma and that's a harm. That's not the debate.
I'm just saying we may not be able to quantify it. I'm just saying that I think that what she was speaking to is that it does exist, even though we may not be able to put a number on it.
And that's a part of the research that Janine was talking about in terms of the interviews with the ones who've given public testimony. It may not be something that's qualitatively quantified, but it's as pivotal to the entire process that we are engaged in, to hear from the public, to know what they feel. We've had some incredible testimonies that spans centuries. The last one I recall was a man who could trace his lineage back to the 1700s, and now where he is today. That is not something that you can say doesn't matter here. And just an end note, because I know we need to make space for Janine and Ayanna to come back. I need you all who are listening to this to understand that on this commission, at least from my perspective, we are not discounting the great work that sociologist Dr. Joy DeGroot has done for many, many years to bring us to a point where we understand why we feel the way we do When we go into a doctor's office and we are not served as others may be served. So while I cannot put a dollar amount on that, and actually I can, because we take off from work to go to doctor's appointments and have to sit there while others are served before us. And that is intergenerationally able to be quantified, because if I miss a day from work, it's going to commence an economic downfall for me and my family. So not being an economist, I do understand loss and how we can quantify it economically with all of these different areas that Commissioner Jones-Austin asked us to consider with the definition that we will eventually get to. And I am definitely leaving room for you legal experts, because as you said, Commissioner Daniel Favors, it's important that it's not just couched in the emotions of it all, but that it will have an ability to stand up legally. And I think ultimately that's what we're all about, right? Because our reports are due to the governor and the legislators. And if we're going in there with our tears, they don't have to consider that. But from a legal perspective, they must. And I do.
So clarifying again, terms, post-traumatic slave syndrome is, to my understanding, a harm, a trauma that took place in the past, that trauma is passed down across generation, and it's not clear how. Is it hereditary? There's the epigenetic literature that tries to make some claim towards some biological transmission. Is it cultural, that the attitudes, norms of a family that experienced some trauma pass down some behavioral norms from one generation to the next? That is exemplified today. What we're not debating, or at least not from my perspective, is whether Black people today still experience disparate treatment when they go to the doctor, a disparate context of social animus when they go through life. Just to be clear, what I find, especially without evidence that I've seen that's compelling, frankly, a racist trope, because it puts the inequities, the onus of inequality on individuals and families, is this notion of heredity, of either some genetic anomaly or some cultural anomaly that goes down across generation, whether it was stimulated by some harm in the past or otherwise.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify just a bit. The underlying theory of post-traumatic slave syndrome, while it does contemplate multi-generational trauma being passed down, whether it's customs, hereditary with epigenetics and so forth, that is only one portion of what is being postulated there. It is the multi-generational trauma together with continued oppression. So the idea behind post-traumatic slave syndrome is not that in the absence of continued oppression, we are hereditarily passing down the experiences of trauma from our ancestors. My understanding of the work that Dr. Joy DeGruy has proffered is that it's the multi-generational trauma due to multi-generational continued oppression. And so I think if we're looking at it solely in terms of multi-generational trauma without that other part, Commissioner Hamilton, I certainly understand your concern about what it might indicate in terms of the potentiality of racist tropes, but it is the harm, or it is the multi-generational trauma that is being experienced because of the multi-generational and continued oppression. And so when we put those things together, and it also contemplates the absence of an opportunity to heal or to assess other benefits available to the broader society. And those things together are what lead to post-traumatic slave syndrome. So it's not solely, and I'm not suggesting that you were saying that it was, but I just for the record want to be clear, it is not solely the idea of multi-generational trauma. It is multi-generational trauma caused by and perpetuated by multi-generational oppression, which together with the absence of opportunity to heal and take advantage of the benefits of society, which lead to post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Thank you. And I want to just highlight that part of our work is looking at the present day harms. And so it sounds like it's in correlation with that. Any more that we want to add to that? Because I want to make room for our researchers to add to that. So researchers are on, Ayana and Dr. Janine, if you all would add to the conversation as we prepare to wrap up.
Yeah, I think, we're gonna, obviously we're focused on harms. I think we're gonna follow your lead on which harms, like Dr. Hamilton mentioned, that we don't want to be overly broad, but really kind of focus on what the commission has identified as harms of a focus, so to say. I don't know what the correct term is, but what you're really focused on in your work as commissioners, and we'll follow your lead. We were definitely gonna, harms was already part of our analysis, I know, especially for Ayana, in terms of the disparate harms and things from laws and policies, but we'll be including that in our work for sure. We'll work with you around getting access to the public education, the public hearing testimony. We need to get those data from you. That's something we need to get anyway. And as we're working through the analysis, we'll work with Dr. Jenkins and Ms. Tarrant Reed around how we're going to analyze that and that those harms data.
I just want to add that all the public hearings, so the transcripts and the video are on our website at ny.gov/reparations. So those that are watching in the community, they can access that. They can hear about the harms that community members had spoke of. And even as Dr. Jenkins mentioned, the history that many have shared and documented. And I always go back to the gentleman in Albany last year when we attended caucus. His family had a book that they had passed down, and he had spoken of even the lynching that had happened right there in front of the Capitol building. And so I think that is going to be important to capture that data as soon as possible. Let me pause and make sure that there are no other comments that we want to add.
I don't have anything on that to do this.
Okay. So anything else regarding harms before we go to other new business? Well, I want to thank you all for PSA. We'll give you an opportunity to exit if you choose. I know we're running a few minutes late, but want to make room for other business. Obviously, we'll have to get to our research questions that are going to guide our work. We don't have time to enter that conversation today, but want to make room for other new business.
So I do have a question, and this relates to our communications and outreach. So I'm still coming across individuals in my travels that are not aware that that our work exists and our commission exists. And so it was interesting, even in some of our interviews of individuals wanting to contract with the commission. They hadn't heard of our work until the RFP came across their desk. And so I'm wondering, from a communications and education and outreach standpoint, what are we really looking, what methods are we really looking to utilize outside of just letting the public know when we have a public hearing or when we have a business meeting? Are we looking at, I'll say, billboards, for lack of a better term, to really let the larger public and make them aware of that we're in existence and how they can connect with us and how they can be a part of this?
Well, I'm going to ask Commissioner Tarrant Reed to add to that. We partner with Words Warriors. They are our communications team, and we've had an effort to, one, get additional advertisements. We've been following traditional Black newspapers. We regularly advertise in Amsterdam. We just had a feature in the Buffalo Criterion. I did some radio for the commission this morning. We still have work to do. New York State is a huge state. And so we have some opportunity, but there is a regular meeting that Commissioner Tarrant Reed has with the team, and I'll ask her to speak to that and the work that they're doing. We also plan to do some work even at the New York State Fair. We plan to be at the caucus in February, and many New Yorkers frequent the caucus and are there, and we plan to be in the hallway in the general area and have access to individuals wanting to provide public testimony. So we still have a lot of work to do, and I agree that I am sometimes disheartened when I'm in the community and folks don't know that we have a commission on reparations, but we still have work to do. Our group, Words Warriors, they started with us mid 2025, and so they're catching up as well. So Commissioner Tarrant Reed, if you want to add to that, I know you meet with them weekly about the work that they're doing, so I'll pause and yield to you.
Correct. A lot of the feedback we get is that the work that we are doing as a commission is not publicized. We have been pushing to increase the coverage. Our chair was interviewed on, was it Utica TV station? So that particular interview is going up on social media. We have a LinkedIn page, we have a Facebook page, and we have an Instagram page. And those pages are populated for, for every meeting. Plus, we have the reparations website where all of the information is. We're continuing to push out interviews. My suggestion to the communications team is to really benefit from all of the incredible commissioners we have so that we can get to know them and also to hear about some of their expertise and how it relates to the work that we're doing. The communications team is currently working on a newsletter that is going to be distributed to a very large database that they have amassed, not only just to media companies, but also to institutions in the communities throughout the state of New York. We also are in the process of creating a palm card, which essentially has the facts of where we are and updated information as to what is happening in the future as far as past meetings, listing, and future meetings. And that palm card should be available at every public hearing and business meeting we have, so attendees can take that information with them. So, they're working hard. I have to say that one of our attendees today, who was at the Utica meeting, she is on some of the public information materials and has actually, transmitted that out to her incredibly large network. Her name is Lisa Nero, and she is the county. I'm the town clerk for Greenberg. She's the town clerk of Greenberg, New York. And with that, I'd like to also say we're so happy to see Simra Brandon, who works with our majority leader, Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins. And we thank her for attending. Also, we had a visitor attendee, Morgan Slocum. She is a representative of Governor Hochul, and she represents the Hudson Valley. So she was able to attend our hearing today. And so we're working on getting the information out, and we as individual commissioners really need to, use our individual networks to push out the media that we have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And
if I may,
yes, Commissioner Daniel Favors.
If I may, I would like, and perhaps this information is available and I'm simply unaware, and if that is the case, my apologies. I would like to request a list of the Black-owned and Black-targeted media spaces that our consultants have engaged with. This is now multiple months of concern about the lack of effective communication. I am sure that they are quite busy doing a ton of work, and for which we are very grateful. But unfortunately, it does not seem to be hitting the mark. And so I'd be very curious to know which Black-owned media outlets, minority-owned media outlets, and which Black-facing media outlets throughout the state they have engaged with. But I think it is wholly appropriate to ask that commissioners also do the work of helping to amplify the body of that that responsibility is not upon the commissioners. And it would seem, this is a very well organized outfit. They've got an Iraqi country manager. They've got a Kurdistan project manager, a Syrian country manager. I don't know who is the American or the New York State manager, but I feel as though we are too far into this process to still have this much challenge with locking in effective communication. So again, if this information is available and I'm simply unaware, my apologies, but I would like to request a list of all of the outlets that they have engaged with that are specifically tied to the demographic with which we are the most concerned. It seems untenable to me, again, going back to what happened in Brooklyn, that we had a room in Brooklyn, New York, on a hearing focused on housing that was at best half full. And so I understand, I get it. And you all may recall that I had raised questions about this because I could not understand why the flyers were not out, why there was not a more amplification of the work up until the day of the hearing. We did not have flyers posted on social media. The flyers that were ultimately shared and available, which I had been informed had been worked on for at least 3 weeks, misspelled the name of the commission. So I personally am wholly unsatisfied with the level of outreach that's happened this far. So I would like to request, and if that information is available, I would like to request the most up-to-date version of that so it can be shared at the next business meeting and discussed. I'm sorry?
Oh, no, that's a side combo.
Yeah.
You're good.
Oh, y'all can't be having sidebar conversations on the mic. Turn off the mic.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll ask the group Words Warriors to provide a small group presentation to us on the work that they've been doing, so that we can, and they can even come to the next business meeting so that we can get some feedback on the work that they're doing. I think that's the best way to resolve it and get feedback. And I'll make sure that Commissioner Tarrant Reed continues to share that. So thank you.
Can I just add something to that, Chair? Just a suggestion to you.
Well, just one thing, the data is on SharePoint. I'm not sure you can access it, but I certainly can send it to you.
Okay.
All of the information, all of the materials that they produce is on SharePoint, as well as distributed and uploaded to social media.
I just want to add a suggestion.
That social media is not quite responsive to my inquiry. Social media is not a Black-owned outlet. They are not Black-facing outlets. So while I appreciate that, that my inquiry is specific to, we have a plethora of Black radio outlets, media outlets, visual, print, digital, and actual print. So social media is lovely, but it is wholly insufficient as it pertains to communicating to the demographic that we need. So while I appreciate that, I would ask that you could send that to me or let me know. As you know, I'm one of the commissioners where my email address is very fugazi, quite frankly, so I have a lot of difficulty getting into the SharePoint. But social media is certainly not responsive to the nature of my inquiry, although I do appreciate that work.
So I was just going to
we are 17 minutes over.
May I just say this, Chair? Let me just say this, because Linda is working with Words Warriors. I would love to see them shift their focus from social media to street evangelism. Get those palm cards that are nice at the back of the room out to the community. You know, they really need to shift. And I think we've become a little lazy in general, hiding behind social media to do the most of our work.
We did get feedback in Brooklyn from some of our attendees on different sites, especially that are targeting younger audiences. And so we'll have to have some of those conversations. So we thank you, Commissioner Tarrant Reed, for liaisoning with Words Warriors, and we expect to see some updates in the coming weeks.
So Commissioner Tarrant Reed, I will volunteer to work with you and be a part of your, so, all right.
Thank you,
Commissioner. We work pretty well together.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoax. We're grateful to you all. I want to remind everybody, we will be in Binghamton, New York on January 17th, and we hope you will join us in Binghamton, New York. That meeting will be chaired by our Vice Chair, Commissioner Jenkins. She's coming to Binghamton. Is that your first time going to Binghamton?
It's my second time.
Your second time, yes. And we hope you all have good weather. But either way, the show will go on. We will be there on the 17th. If you can't make it, you can stream in. You can visit our website at ny.gov yonkers.org/reparations. I want to thank you all for participating. We want to thank our policy experts and research historians, PSA. Tremendous work, and we are grateful. And yes, let's give them a round of applause. I want to acknowledge really quickly before we go that we're in 2 locations. And so our Yonkers location, we are at the Philipse Manor State Historic Site. And I see that there are many guests there, and glad to see some repeat guests here in Rochester. We have the Rock Community Table with us. Let's hear the Rock Community Table so we know they're in the room. So we're happy. Hopefully, Jim can do a scan of the room, but we have the Rock Community Table here attending the meeting, and we thank all of the community members that have joined via Zoom or online streaming. We ask that you join our efforts and share the work of the commission, share the website work, ny.gov/reparations. This is a business meeting, so there is no public comment, but we look forward to you all making your public comment on January 17th in Binghamton, New York. With that said, I would like to call this meeting adjourned.
All right.
And so thank you, everyone. Yes.
We have to make a motion.
Not for adjourn. Not to adjourn.
Not to adjourn.
Not to adjourn.
Okay.
Not to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so that was the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies, and that was the business meeting. All right, let me just put this one on pause real quick, because at the very end, they were talking about a little bit about the social media piece, and it sounds like they was talking about the promotion of these hearings not getting out. That's the way I took it. If I'm wrong, feel free to put it in the comments real quick, and we'll put it on the screen. But yeah, but I kind of beg to differ a little bit, because a lot of this got started per se, or was heightened even more because of social media. And they mentioned younger people, but it seems like younger people are more on social media than being in the street, if you will. And nothing wrong with going in the streets as well. I say put all of that together. Gather your brochures or your pamphlets, go out and with the street teams, as well as having your social media teams, because you can't just go look past social media and kind of downplay social media, because the reason why a lot of stuff is being talked about, even in mainstream or the lamestream media, is because of social media. And yeah, the lady mentioned something about, it was not owned by anybody Black, although I guess fan base is, but there was some issues with Mr. Isaac Hayes Jr., or the third or the second or whoever, which one he is, hiring people outside. Maybe he has hired some Black Americans, but also hired Middle Easterns or somebody else. So that's another thing in itself. So can't downplay social media. And they mention other Black media, such as myself, part of the new Black media. I'm just not as maybe known or whatever. I just kind of do my stuff under the radar, like this right here. They didn't have an idea that I was going to even put this live, but I felt it was as important for people to know about this business meeting as just like the public hearings, which I posted 1 or 2 in the past. So, and we'll try to also go live with the January 17th, the public hearing, by the way, coming up on January 17th. So yeah, that was kind of interesting for them to say something like that, or for that lady to kind of mention that, kind of downplaying social media a little bit. I think social media has been very pivotal and very important as well, because a lot of people are on social media. All right. But yeah, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. that was, again, the New York State Community, I want to say county for some reason, Community Commission on Reparations Remedies. And that was their business meeting, as you guys see on the screen, the January 9th, 2026. As you see that on the screen, okay? All right. And we appreciate y'all for tapping in, okay? Be sure to check us out again. We're going to definitely try to broadcast live or catch it live. And if not, we'll play the replay either that same day later on or the next day. All right. But we always try to get it live in full effect. All right. So much respect. Appreciate y'all. Again, thank you everybody who's tapped in, who's watching me from Twitter, from 365 Ideas, that's on YouTube, Thoughts of the Week podcast on YouTube and Twitch. What's the 411 News on YouTube and Twitch. Live Events Now Network on YouTube. And of course, my personal pages on Twitter and Facebook. All right. We thank you again. As always, we got to do the we got to get out here with both intros because we broadcasted on both of them platforms. I should have got the other ones for the other channels, but we'll do it the next time around. There you go. All right. There you go. Okay. We definitely appreciate y'all as we close out with both intros. All right. You're rocking with the best. This is Thoughts of the Week podcast. Let's first end off with this intro and then we'll end off with the next one. Appreciate y'all. Real quick, who we got here? Oh, as always. Okay. Yeah, much respect, man. I would put that on there, but that's not for this particular broadcast. So, but I appreciate you trying to promote your stuff. Maybe on another live, we'll do that for you. All right. And of course, once again, we appreciate y'all. What's the 411 News, Thoughts of the Week podcast, Live Events Now Network, 365 Ideas, the one of the very few FBA, if not the only FBA Black think tank, 365 Ideas, inspired by Dr. Claude Anderson's Harvest Institute think tank. We appreciate y'all. And again, January 17 is the next one. That's the public hearing. This one was the business meeting. And I'm sure they're probably doing some more. They did some more meetings, but this one was the, I guess, the public one that they broadcasted publicly. So the next one is the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies public hearing. I think they said Binghamton. Let me look up something real quick. The next one is in Binghamton. Yep. The American Legion post number 80, that's 76 Main Street, Binghamton, New York, is 13904. So that's where the public hearing is going to be at. And again, we'll try to definitely broadcast that as well. All right. Thank y'all for watching. We definitely appreciate it. And I definitely, I don't know, I can't say I appreciate it, but I'm definitely glad to broadcast it to y'all so y'all can be up on what's going on as well, man. All right. This is What's the 411 News. We're going to end it with that one. We out. Peace. Welcome Black to What's the 411 News, where we bring you news observation, interpretation, and news commentary from an FBA and BGR perspective. Let's get it. All right. Thank y'all. We out. Be sure to check out What's the 411 News, Thoughts of the Week podcast, 365 Ideas, live events now. Y'all check that out. It has it's kind of the Netflix style channel on YouTube, Live Events Now Network. All right. Be sure to check them out. It has all the different broadcasts from different channels. All right. Appreciate y'all. We out until the next time. Peace.